Let's get right to the series of questions, and we're going to start our first question right here in this building, on this campus. USM, of course, as many of us know, is going through a very painful time right now. There's been budget cuts, there's been downsizing, there's talk of possibly more to come, including possibly getting rid of majors like French. Here's the question. What do you tell the students here at USM and their parents, who are often writing those tuition checks, about the direction of this university and the UMaine system as a whole under your leadership over the next 4 years? And let's go ahead and begin based on our rotating format. Governor Paul LePage, this question begins with you.
Well, I would say that there's no surprise that the university system has been in trouble for many years. It's been declining enrollment. Tuition has been going up. We just had 2 years ago, we put in a new chancellor. I'm cautious to be too critical because I think he has to have an opportunity to get his feet wet and get some programs going around the system, but we are watching very closely. I have many ideas, but I don't want to second guess him and put him in a position where he can't do his job. I think we need to do something. We need to look at out-of-state students, out-of-country students. We need to be building the university to what it can be and what it once was.
Thank you very much. Same question to you, Mr. Cutler.
Thanks, Greg. We have a cost and an access problem. The cost of running two separate systems of higher education, the community colleges and the university system, in a state of 1,300,000 people is too high. We have 7 campuses in each system. 5 years ago, I proposed that we merge the two systems so that we no longer have 2 CEOs, 2 boards of trustees, 2 of this, 2 of that. It's like Noah's Ark. Let's get the costs under control. And let's make sure that all of our kids who graduate from high school in the state of Maine have an opportunity to go to college, go to university, go to some kind of post-high school training so that they're ready for the jobs of the future, for 21st century jobs. I proposed pay it forward, pay it back. It's a way to do this. But we need to get our costs under control, and we need to make sure that every kid in the state of Maine has a chance to go forward.
Thank you very much. And we move next to Congressman Michaud. Same question, please.
Thank you very much. The problem with the higher ed is the fact that the university system, the enrollment's down, funding has been stagnant for a number of years. And when you look at economic development, economic growth, education is important. When I talk to CEOs and site selectors from all around the country, they're telling me that if they're going to locate their business, they need an educated workforce. And if the workforce is not educated, they need the ability to be able to retool that workforce so we can have those skilled workers for the future. So education is definitely an investment in the future. When you look at the University of Southern Maine, this is the economic engine of the state, Southern Maine. And the fact that this economic engine, the University of Southern Maine, has to have its rightful place within the university system. One way to actually help when you look at higher education, under my Maine plan, I'm having the sophomore year tuition free. And the reason why the sophomore year is tuition free is that is the year that students usually drop out of college because they can no longer afford that college. So an investment in the future, we have to start investing in education.
Thank you very much. I know we're having some trouble with our countdown clock in front of the candidates, so I've got a backup system right here, so I'll be keeping, unless that reactivates, I'm going to keep the 1 minute time limit right here as well. I believe Chris Cousins just indicated he has a follow-up he'd like to ask.
I do, and good evening, gentlemen. For much of the past 4 years, both tuition and state allocations to the university system have been frozen. To what degree does that contribute to the problem that the university is facing, and as governor, would you continue measures like that?
If I may, I'll direct that to Governor Paul LePage, please.
Does that follow up same? Okay. I started last
No, it's
time.
all right, sir.
Yeah, the university system has been stagnated, and as I say again, we have a plan. In fact, we've been working on a system right now where University of Maine, Fort Kent, and Fort Kent High School have put together a pilot program. We started in 2011 with 25 students, of which they all succeeded in their junior, senior year. They completed junior, senior year. 1 student completed a year and a half of college. 17 completed a freshman year of college, and the other 6 completed 1 semester of college. That really worked. And this year, we've got 250 kids in it. So rather than just look at the sophomore year, I think we look at pilot year, and the pilot year and the bridge year, and we go from K through all the way through the system. Because right now, 52% high school graduates that want to go on to further education have to do remedial work. So that will continue unless we address the issue in the lower grades.
I'd like to direct it next to Congressman Michaud. And if you would, please, as well, you mentioned the sophomore year. That seems like it could potentially add more debt to the system, if you discussed a way to pay for that plan as well.
Yeah, the sophomore year, that's state dollars. That's the biggest part of my Maine Made plan. That I'm looking forward to putting forward and providing funding for. The governor, when you look, that's a very good question as far as freezing tuition. I'm not intending to ask either the university or the community college system to freeze the tuition. That's something they need additional funding from the state. We can't keep having stagnant funding at the state level. Budgets are about priorities. The governor made a priority to do huge tax cuts for the wealthiest 1% of Mainers here in the state of Maine. That was his priority. My priority is in education, getting our economy moving once again. We have to start putting priorities first versus tax cuts for the wealthiest individuals here in the state of Maine.
And Governor LePage, before I get to Mr. Cutler on this, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Just to get the record straight here. You know, I've been listening to this rhetoric for a year. You would say today, did a summary of the tax cuts. The poorest people in the state of Maine, people making $25,000 or below, have fallen to 38th in the country as far as tax burden. People making $100,000 or greater are number 5 in the country. $100,000 or greater. Those are the richest people in Maine, folks. And I don't know how many of you are making $100,000, but it's not that rich.
I'll let you respond. I really need to give some time to Mr. Cutler, please.
Okay, thank you. You know, before we start investing again, let's fix these systems so that they're able to deliver what people have a right to expect. Kids all over the state of Maine, in my view, have a right to expect that they can go to college or go to the university without facing $60,000 or $80,000 in loans. They have a right to be trained. They have a right to be educated. Because if we want Maine to be a strong 21st century economy, those kids have to be educated. But you know what else? Their parents and they have a right to expect that faculty members will teach courses, that they won't be paid $108,000 to teach 1 or 2 courses and have 2 office hours a week. Kids have a right, and their parents have rights, to have a merged higher education system in Maine that in fact provides everyone with access at costs we can afford. We will do that when we're governor.
And I may extend it, Congressman.
Absolutely. I mean, the governor would want people to believe that a lot of Mainers received a huge tax cut. The bottom line is, for those individuals in the state of Maine who make $15,000 a year, they receive less than $10 under Governor LePage's tax plan.
And I'm going to allow Governor LePage a chance to answer in the final word to Eliot Cutler.
Mike, I'm sorry. In all due respect, they pay no taxes now. None. We cut them off. The 70,000 lowest income people in Maine pay no income tax.
Audience, please. Hold your applause, please. Mr. Cutler.
So here's a guy who wants to cut everything. And here's a guy who wants to cut nothing. Now, by my calculations, Congressman Michaud has proposed that we're going to spend another $320 million in new spending. Now, let me tell you a secret. He has a pro-growth tax in mind. I've never met a tax that's pro-growth, but he has a pro-growth tax in mind. He won't tell you, I just did. Let's ask him to tell us which of your taxes he's going to raise to pay for that $320 million.
Let's get the answer to that.
Okay, that's very good question, and it's an important question. And I know the governor does have a difficult situation in balancing the budget because the Constitution requires you to balance the budget. I served as chair of the Appropriation Committee as well as president of the Maine Senate, and I know all too well how difficult it is to balance the budget, both during good times as well as in bad times. But I also know that budgets are priorities. then if the governor wants something, the governor can get it. What Mr. Cutler talks about is my $300 million plan. My plan is $35 million. I made it very clear. My goal is to get to the 55% for state aid. We're not going to get there overnight. And as someone who's negotiated contracts or budgets before, and I know it's going to be a difficult task. But the governor made his priorities. His priorities were tax cuts for the wealthiest individuals here in the state of Maine, and some for the lower individuals, but the bulk of it for the wealthiest individuals. My priority is the middle class, small businesses, and making sure that anyone here and his children in this state have an education that they can be proud of.
All right, I'm ready to move on to question 2 at any point, but as long as we're discussing it, we'll stay here. Governor LePage, you indicated first
two things respond quickly. Mike talks about small business, but he got a 0 from NFIB. And when it comes to his tax increase, Eliot, I agree with you. As you said to me last week, halfway there, he is at $1.2 billion. Yours is about $800 million that you're going to have in tax increases. Let me tell you, we balanced the budget last 2 years. You may not realize that. You were in Washington. Thank you.
And I'll let you respond to that, Eliot Cutler, if I may go to you.
Okay, Mike, with all due respect, this is your problem, not the governor's. Because if you're going to increase to 55%, just to take that one element of the $320 million, if you're going to increase to 55%, it's going to cost about $188 million. I don't care when you're going to do it, whether you do it in year 1 or year 2. I've proposed getting to about 50% with property tax cuts and a slight sales tax increase, but I've treated voters like adults, and I've said, this is what we're going to do. Here are a couple of options. I think that you owe it to people to tell them, whether it's in year 1 or year 2 or year 3 or year 4, which of their taxes you're going to raise or where else you're going to find the money.
Obviously, a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. My Maine plan is a focus plan. It's focused on getting the economy moving again. That's why it's a very modest plan of $35 million. The bulk of that $35 million a year is the $15 million for making the sophomore year tuition free. And I never said we're going to get to the 55% overnight. I said we're going to actually, that's my goal, is to get the state towards that 55%. The governor talks about balancing the budget. Every governor has to balance the budget because the Constitution requires you to balance the budget. But what the governor doesn't talk about was when those tax cuts went into effect, the bulk of those tax cuts went into effect outside the budget cycle, so he wouldn't have to pay for them. When it came time to submit the budget to pay for it, the governor shifted the cost, proposed a budget that eliminated municipal revenue sharing, shifted the cost of education back on the municipalities, and did a lot of other things, that just shifted the cost, and that's what this governor is good at.
I'm going to have to move it on. Obviously, Governor LePage, a chance. Audience, please. Audience, please. Governor LePage, a chance to respond to that, please. To that
in the last 4 years, we've added $7 million a year to education in the state of Maine. And that's number one. Number two, the budget was passed bipartisan by the Democrats and the Republicans in 2011.
Go
you know what? But finally, Mike talks about education. What he hasn't told you is he's said all along that on day one, he is going to stop testing kids in our schools, and he's going to let teachers do what teachers do best, is teach. That decision is worth $250 million day one.
I never said I was going to have stop doing the testing. What I said, I was going to eliminate the A through F grades, the demeaning grades that you decided to put on education.
Audience?
No, I'm sorry, sir. In March 2014, you said that on day one that you would stop testing from the federal government, and that you would allow teachers to do what they do best, is teach. Now, I don't have it right in front of me, but I'll get you that quote tomorrow morning. We have it in my office. Thank you.
I hopefully you
10
do.
10 seconds, Congressman. Now, I'm going to let Eliot Cutler have the last word on this topic.
You know what? I think people have heard enough.
Fair enough. Well, let's move on to question 2.